Hello, welcome to The World Right Now. I'm Lynda Kinkade in for Hala Gurani. US President Barack Obama says it's clear the San Bernardino shooters embraced a perverted interpretation of Islam. He addressed the nation last night from the White House, vowing to destroy ISIS. But he also warned Americans not to let fear divide them and destroy their fundamental values. Joe Johns has more.
The threat from terrorism is real, but we will overcome it.
President Obama speaking passionately to millions in a rare Oval Office address late Sunday, strongly condemning ISIS and calling Wednesday's mass shooting in San Bernardino a terrorist attack.
It is clear that the two of them had gone down the dark path of radicalization. So this was an act of terrorism.
Obama doubling down on his four-point strategy to defeat the terrorist group.
The strategy that we are using now, airstrikes, special forces, and working with local forces who are fighting to regain control of their own country. And it won't require us sending a new generation of Americans overseas to fight and die for another decade on foreign soil.
At home, Obama putting stronger screenings on people arriving in the U.S. without a visa and insisting on more gun control.
Congress should act to make sure no one on a no-fly list is able to buy a gun.
Mr. Trump, what would you do as president to prevent the mass shootings?
The policy GOP presidential hopefuls are calling insufficient to tackle the evolving threat. Donald Trump tweeting, "Is that all there is?" and retweeting, he needs to stop all visas, not look at them. Jeb Bush proposing his own more aggressive strategy and calling the fight against ISIS the war of our time.
There's a real problem that Muslims must confront without excuse.
President Obama ending his 13-minute speech with an appeal to Muslims to root out extremist ideology, while also calling on Americans to reject discrimination.
Muslim Americans are our friends and our neighbors, our co-workers, our sports heroes. And yes, they are our men and women in uniform who are willing to die in defense of our country.
The cynicism.
Senator Marco Rubio pushing back.
Where is there widespread evidence that we have a problem in America with discrimination against Muslims and the refusal to call this for what it is, a war on radical Islam? Not only did the president not to make things better tonight, I fear he may have made things worse.
Now, it did not take long for Republican candidates to slam the speech. Let's bring in Stephen Collinson for more on this. He's a senior political reporter for CNN Politics. Stephen, President Obama spoke about a strategy to defeat ISIS, a strategy that doesn't include ground troops. He really seemed to make a case for sticking with his current policy. How is this all being perceived in Washington?
That's right, Linda. This speech clearly didn't change the political controversy in Washington over the president's anti-ISIS strategy. As you say, it was more of a doubling down on the current strategy in a defense of that strategy rather than unveiling any major new initiatives and intensifications of the strategy. And for Republicans, that's just not enough. They're saying that this strategy has clearly not stopped the spread, the march of ISIS across the Middle East into new terror havens there and in South Asia. And it has not stopped it turning its sights on the West, as we saw in the Paris attack. And it's not stopped it from radicalizing Muslims in other parts of the world, notably in California, following last week's attack.
And Stephen, for the first time, there is a new poll out, a CNN ORC poll that found that a majority of Americans, 53%, say the US should send ground troops to Iraq or Syria to fight ISIS. Will that play into the hands of critics of Obama?
Yes, I think so. I think what that poll confirms is the gradual shifting of the politics of deploying American troops abroad over the period since the Iraq War. We've seen some slight shifts in that before. This is the first time we've seen a narrow majority in favor of deploying troops abroad. But that is also an abstract question. If an American president were to come before the American people and say, I need to deploy 200,000, say, troops aboard for a prolonged period, a new long-term Middle East war, I think you'd see that figure would be different. And that's reflected in the fact that although some Republican presidential candidates have said they would be willing to deploy troops to Syria, for example, on the ground to fight ISIS, there's no presidential candidate who is proposing to the American people that we should get into a new engagement in the Middle East, a long-term war, similar to the one we saw in Iraq.
OK, we'd love to discuss this more. We'll have to leave it there for now. Stephen Collinson, senior political reporter, thank you very much.
Thanks, Linda.
Well, still to come this hour, a man appears in court over a stabbing at an underground station in London. We'll bring you all the details of that just ahead.